Dave McGillivray. If you've not met Dave, Dave is our race director here for the New Balance Falmouth Road Race, as well as our panelists today. These folks have run the World Marathon Challenge, and if you've heard me over the announcement or the loudspeaker, what that means is tomorrow you're going to run 7 miles. Okay? Think about that. 7 miles. It's a challenge, right? But imagine running a marathon. It's 3 times that. Now imagine doing that every day for 7 days straight, and then go do that on 7 different continents in those 7 days. So today's panelists are going to share that experience with us and explain to us what that was like, the ins and outs, and hopefully get some of you inspired to join them next round maybe or so. So I'm going to hand it over to Dave, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Maybe we'll get a larger crowd. Maybe people are just intimidated by all of this, and you're the only people that feel like maybe someday you'll be able to do it, right? Anyone in the audience want to do this? There's one. All right, we got one. All right, well, thank you, everyone, again, for attending. I just want to start off by introducing our panelists, if you will. What's fascinating about the World Marathon Challenge this year, which was the end of January, beginning of February, was that there were 50 athletes, or 51, in the races, and 6 of them came from New England, and you're seeing 5 of them right here. So you had athletes from China, from Japan, from the UK, from Australia, from all over the world, and 6 of them from New England, and 5 of them are here right now. So I'd like to introduce Nick Wishart right here. Nick's from Rhode Island.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dave.
Round of applause for Nick. A little round of applause for Nick, yes. Kelly McLay. Kelly, where are you living now, Peabody?
Beverly, Massachusetts.
Beverly, Massachusetts. Yes. Becca Pizzi. Becca's from Belmont.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay. And Renee DeMarsh. Renee, are you in?
Sandwich.
Renee gets the award from coming the longest distance. All right. And I'm Dave McGillivray, and I'm from parts unknown. So again, 5 panelists. We just want to sort of explain to you what this is all about. So let me just give you a quick little snapshot of where this all began. A gentleman out of Ireland by the name of Richard Donovan come up with this scheme called the World Marathon Challenge. He himself did it. What did he do it in Becca, like 4.5 days or something like that? So he did his own booking, went to all 7 continents, did all 7 marathons himself, and probably said to himself at that time, maybe there could be a handful of other crazy people out there in the world that might be interested in doing something like this. So 4 years ago, he created the World Marathon Challenge. So this was the 4th year. The first year, and again, Becca did it the 2nd year, and she did it this year. So she is only one of 2, I think, that did it twice. So if you think that we need to get our head examined to come back and do it again, Becca did it twice. So round of applause for Becca. And of course, she won it both times, is in the Guinness Book of Records for this event. So congratulations to Becca. First year, I think there were around 12, 15. Second year, how many? No, second year, about 15 again. Third year, I think it was 39 or 35, something like that. And then this past year, I think the total was 51. And of the 51, how many you think finished the whole thing of 51? Yell it out. You knew, that's why. So of 51 people who started the World Marathon Challenge, 50 of them finished. So it just kind of gives you a sense that maybe someday, you know, I wrote a book called Dream Big. It's over in the middle. There it is right there, Dream Big. So you might dream big someday and maybe set a goal of doing this challenge someday. So again, that's sort of the history a little bit of the World Marathon Challenge. Now, what I'd like to do is ask the single most often asked question of all these people. What's the single one biggest question asked of all these people when they say they did the World Marathon Challenge? Why? Why? So I'm going to throw it to Nick and go right down. Nick, why? Why did you do this?
Well, I saw the piece on ESPN, the Ted Jackson piece, the first year, and it just completely, like, I couldn't take my mind off it ever since watching that piece. So just kind of why not? You know, I thought it was doable, achievable, and but not impossible. I thought the way Richard makes it, you know, so that we can get through it and not, you know, he gives us enough time each day to get through it. So I kind of figured it was, and I love the travel part. I love the running part. I thought it was a great thing to, you know, combine those two. So I would do it again if I could.
So Nick, while you have the mic, so you people understand, they are human, all right? And the fact of the matter is, those of you who are here for that last group, you had Bill Rogers, Frank Shorter, Rod Dixon, you know, Steven Sambu, all of them can run really, really fast. But do you think any of them could run 7 marathons in 7 days and 7 continents? I don't know. Maybe not now, but in their heyday, maybe they could. But the fact of the matter is that this is a very, very different experience. So again, maybe I want to ask Nick, and I want to ask everyone else, well, what's your background? What gave you the right to think that you could do this?
I just, you know, I grew up running, and I just felt like if you put enough time in, you train for it, you eat right, you learn how to stretch and recover, how to sleep on the plane a little bit, and you just trust yourself. You know, if you put enough time in, you just trust yourself. But I had no idea. There's no way to replicate it back home, so I just sort of, you know, kind of winged it.
So how many marathons have you run?
11.
Okay, and on average, how many miles a week prior to the World Marathon Challenge did you run? On average.
Well, 11 counting the 7. How many had I done prior?
Yeah,
like
prior.
Three.
He ran 3 marathons prior to the World Marathon Challenge, and this guy thought he could do it.
Yeah.
Well, he did. He
You
did.
did it-
So
you
it kind
did
of
it
puts
too,
it in
Dave.
perspective a little bit.
You did it too, buddy.
I did. All right, moving along to Kelly. Kelly, why and what's your background, running background?
So I actually found out about a month before the race that I was going to be able to do it. I came off a win in Antarctica, and I had just had a baby. So
just had a baby, found out a couple of months before, and said, what do I want to do next month?
So it didn't sound like the best training plan, but when the offer got put on the table, I actually said to my husband, well, I can't say no. And he said, well, actually, you can. But for me, it's my passion. I have spent about 10 years plus taking runners around the world to run marathons. I've run 62 marathons myself, including the 7 on the World Marathon Challenge. And it's my ultimate passion. And so for me, I think I have a pretty resilient mind. I'm pretty determined, and I think a lot of this is resiliency of knowing you can, believing you can, and not letting your mind tell you can't. So for me, I couldn't say no. It's my passion. I love it. And when I met my husband as well, I got a job taking people around the world, and he said, you have to take it. All I know about you is that you run marathons and travel the world. So.
All right, so you just heard from those two and their background and the fact that Nick only ran 3 marathons. She decided to do it 2 months before after she had a baby. I asked the question how many people wanted to do this. 1 hand went up. Anyone else now want to do it? No more hands, huh? All right. Becca Pizzi.
So I joked that I had nothing better to do in January, but the truth is I started running when I was 6 years old. And my dad inspired me to run, and have always been drawn to the ultimate test of endurance and strength. And I had a shot at making history when I ran it. No American female had finished it. They had attempted it, but they weren't able to finish it. So I said to my daughter, I said, Taylor, what do you think about this? And she said, yeah, Mom, I believe in you. You can do it. And I was so lucky and happy to have her support. I asked my parents. They said, no, this sounds dangerous. This sounds like you should skip it. But I wanted to represent our country, and I wanted to show my daughter that you could do anything you put your mind to if you believe in yourself. So, it was an unbelievable journey around the world, and I was fortunate enough to do it.
So Becca, as far as doing it twice, do you think the second time around was, I'm not saying the thing was easy, was it easier than the first time? Only because you knew what you were up against, you had the knowledge, you knew what to do to train, you knew what to do to prepare? Or was it even more challenging because sometimes ignorance is bliss, and now you know what you're up against. How'd you feel the second time versus the first?
The second time I was lucky to have the first one underneath my belt, so I knew that the pressure was off and I knew that I could figure it out just once I started running. And the second time I had gone to Canada and trained in extreme cold conditions. I sat in a sauna for sauna training, so I had a little bit of different training. I had the help of Tom Brady's company, TB12, so I thought if it works for Tom Brady, it's definitely going to work for me. So I went out to Foxborough and trained there and had a lot of support for them. So I finished the second time without an injury, so I felt really lucky to do that. And this time was a bigger group, and it was a lot more fun having more Americans there and people that spoke English. So I had a lot of fun second time.
Awesome. Okay, Renee, to you. Again, why did you do it, and what's your background going into it?
So I've always liked to try to challenge myself. I think that escalated when I turned 50. You kind of start feeling like you want to challenge yourself more while you still can do it. The first road race I ever did was the Mount Washington road race. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just out of college. So when I heard about this, I heard a podcast with Michael Wardian and Ryan Hall, and they're very elite. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm a school teacher, and I started telling my students about this race. And then once I was committed to it and the cat got let out of the bag and my students found out about it, I had 800 kids talking to me about it and putting pressure on me. So that was a very good motivator throughout the whole experience. So I didn't want to let them down. I would have had to give them the failure lesson. But fortunately, I did manage to finish, and it was a great experience. I would definitely do it again. I have done mostly ultramarathons lately. That's really my favorite thing to do, is to run far. So 50 milers, I've done one 100-miler, and I'm scheduled to do another 100-miler soon. But I just like the challenge and seeing if I can still do it.
So that's great. So you see someone like Renee has a lot of experience, a lot of ultra-distance running. There were 2 participants in the World Marathon Challenge this year, happened to be part of my group, who had only done 1 marathon, 1 leading into that. So you ask yourself, what would possess them to think that they could actually do this? But they just signed up and did it. So it's pretty amazing. For me personally, it's a little different than most of them. You know, for me, I'm a lot older than most of them. So I was, I think, the second oldest. So there is hope for those of you who are 60 years of age or older to continue to do something like this. Secondly, for me, I did it because I got a phone call from somebody saying, have you ever heard of the World Marathon Challenge? I said, yes, of course. They said, would you want to do it? I said, I'm not paying that entry fee to do it. You know, my wife, who's sitting right here, wouldn't be too pleased with that. Would you? No, she was just trying to get rid of me, so she didn't mind. So I said, I can't do that. And he said, well, I can handle that for you. Don't worry about the fee. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, sign me up. So that's the only reason why I signed up. I had an opportunity that very few other people get. And I want to talk to each one of these folks as to one of the biggest challenges is the fact that this thing costs a little bit shy of $50,000 to enter. So you're going all over the world. You're traveling about 300,000 miles, or whatever, 30,000 miles around the world. And so it costs a lot of money to do it. So how do you raise the money? How do you afford to do something like this? A lot of people would like to do it but can't because of the financial challenge to it. But for me, I said, no, I really want to do it. Now, it's interesting. I've run a real lot of marathons, and I've run a lot of ultra-distance stuff. But at the same time, I felt like, you know, I haven't done something like this in a long time. And a lot of people were saying to me, that's not a big deal. You can do this easily. And that put a lot of pressure on me. I always say pressure is a privilege to do these things. But for me, it was like really, really challenging leading up to this because I was so nervous. Am I really going to be able to do it? And there's an expectation out there, probably the same with you, Becca, that you're going to win it again. I mean, that's a lot of pressure because people just automatically assumed I was going to be able to bang through this, and I wasn't that confident that I could. So I really got myself all wound up emotionally, and in a certain sense, that really bothered me throughout the entire event until the very last race, and I knew I had it. So everyone comes at this in a different way. I want to show you 7 videos, and that's each continent. And if you can hear it, just a little background music and the videos, and you'll be able to get a perspective. Then I'm going to come back to the panel, ask them another question, and then open it up to all of you folks. So that's the plane we were in. So again, imagine, you know, running a marathon. So what we did basically, we started off, we all met in Cape Town, South Africa. We were there for 2 or 3 days. Then we boarded a plane, we flew to Antarctica, Novo, Antarctica, landed the plane, got out, a few hours later, ran that marathon, a loop course. All these courses were loop courses, anywhere between 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 loops of a course. Then we waited for the final finishes, got a little something to eat, got back on the plane, and flew to Cape Town. It was about 19 degrees in Antarctica. We all thought it was going to be like minus 19, so it really surprised us. We all trained for the really cold weather, and it was colder here in Boston than it was in Antarctica on that day. So we all got hosed because we all went up to Canada to train to get acclimated to really cold weather, and it never was really that cold in Antarctica. So then we flew back to Cape Town, and it was 70, 80 degrees, so we went from the freezer to the frying pan. So we ran in Cape Town a couple hours later, got back on a bus, went to the airport, got back on a plane, flew 12 hours to Perth, Australia, get off the plane, get on a bus, went to the venue, get off the bus, ran the marathon, got back on the bus, went back to the airport, got back on a plane, flew to Dubai, and this went on and on and on for 7 days. So here's Antarctica right here, if you can see it. So this is the plane we landed on, right on the ice. Here they are setting up the course. People are wearing the goggles or the glasses. Becca was great for me anyways in telling us how to prepare, what to bring, because preparation was probably more important in what you wore and what you brought versus your training. And even a duel participated from were they from Australia? Australia. Gary Thornton from Ireland won every race. He's a 2:17 marathoner. So he averaged about 3 hours for each marathon. There's Kelly. I'm not in any of these videos, by the way, you know. I went so slow. No, I'm kidding. Oh, yeah. So there were 2 planes. A really nice plane that most of us flew. Becca and Kelly flew in on a cargo plane. They had to lie down, and you can grab the mic and say a few words. Go ahead. Here's Gary winning here.
So Dave and Renee and Nick got a really nice, luxurious plane into Antarctica. And Becca and I drew the short straws and got the cargo plane. And Becca and I spent the 6 hours on the flight wrapped up pretty much on cargo, sitting straight up or laying on top of the toilets, which actually ended up leaking on us. So
Nice.
Quite different experiences landing in Antarctica. But
So when we got to Antarctica, they took us to these almost like, I don't know, what would you call them? Just a storage trailer, and that's where we hung out for an hour or 2 before the start of the race. They called us up, lined us up, off we went. So this is just pictures of us running by the planes. Not too many hills for us, and not a lot of people. Did anyone wear spikes on their shoes? No, so we all just wore our regular footwear in the race itself. And here we are finishing. So that was Antarctica, some of us right there. We went to a canteen area and had a little bite to eat. They had, what they have for food? Mashed potatoes and hot dogs or something, you know? Not too good. Here I am saying, do I really want to do this? Get out of here. Off we go to Cape Town, South Africa. Watch this one. Anything on this one, Becca?
You know, the hardest part about this was the temperature changes. You know, like Dave said, we went from 19 degrees, and this one was like 85. So your body's in shock, and you're only averaging about, how many hours per continent? Yeah, we're plane to the start, so you're only averaging about 12 hours per continent. So people will say, oh, go visit and there's no time to go visit that. So I got a little lost in this. A couple times, because the signs aren't in English, you get a little lost and you're a little frustrated.
And as you can see, there's not like there's, 500,000 spectators out there cheering us on. Most of the people that were out there had no idea what we were doing. We were just kind of like in their way more than anything. So you're truly on your own, and even though you see people running together, on many cases we were running alone almost the whole marathon. I mean, you ran a lot of the marathons. I saw you because they were out and backs. Imagine running a marathon all by yourself, the whole race, and then doing another one 8 hours later or 10 hours later all by yourself. Even though there were 50 of us, it gets spread out really quick.
Yeah, Cape Town was in the middle of a really bad water shortage, and they handed out things that looked like water balloons, and we're like smashing them on our heads, and you felt kind of insensitive because of that. But it was hot.
So here's Gary. I think he ran 3 hours flat on this one. So in Antarctica, he was like 3:10 or 3:07, and here he was right around 3. That's Jason right there? Yeah.
I think this
From
was a
Hong
tough
Kong.
turn, too, because we left at
here
3
we
in the
are.
morning. We left at 3 in the morning from Antarctica, and this race was run about 12 or 1 p.m., and you can see there's no cover. So it was blaring hot African sun, and none of us had more than 5 hours of sleep.
So off we go. When we flew to Perth, Australia, it was a 12-hour flight, and then we started this race around 7, 8 at night, 8 p.m. So this is the first one we ran at night. The next 3 races we were running at nighttime and into the early morning hours. And this was right near athletic stadium where they played, was it cricket? Where they played cricket. So that's why we had to wait until the cricket match was over, because there were so many people in the area, for that to be over before we could start our marathon. And you'll see a lot of these were on like pathways or sidewalks. It wasn't necessarily out on the open streets. And they custom designed all these courses just for us. We didn't run like the Dubai marathon course. The courses that we ran were the courses that Richard Donovan designed just for this event. There was Nick right there.
My favorite part of this race was at the turnaround, there was this open air bar, and they had just had this big cricket match, so there were guys jumping over the wall running with us that had some fun at the bar. It was very entertaining.
So you see Kelly in here, you see Nick in this round. Here's Becca finishing right there. This guy, Josh Cohen, was the other one from New England. He's from Connecticut. Here's Gary again, winning. So Gary and Becca so far have won all 3 races. 2:59.59 on his 3rd marathon in a row. So this is the path like that we ran out and back, out and back, out and back. Was that Kelly? I don't know. So here I am finishing, and so look at this picture, right? Here I am finishing, and Becca is holding the brake tape. Shows you she finished a day and a half before me. I'm not really fond of this picture, by the way. I appreciate you holding the brake tape, but it tells a bigger story.
How often do you get to do that?
Yeah, right. Here we are. And here are the medals that we won, and Becca has the medals here that she can show you that all of us got. What was cool about it, too, is they allowed us all to break the brake tape. How often do you get to run a race and break a brake tape if you're not first? But every time you finish the race, you broke the brake tape. Here's Dubai in Asia. That's cute. He was the oldest one in the race. I think Robert was 70. Oh, 67? 67. Again, another race in the middle of the night. Right along the ocean.
You don't like it.
There's Kelly right there.
Back when I was a blonde.
So what was interesting about the gentleman pushing the woman in the chair, like Rick and Dick Hoyt, is that there were two folks doing it, but we were also inspired with what they were doing. Imagine having to transport, the gear and all of that from continent to continent and still push this woman through the marathon is pretty amazing. But then a lot of us pitched in and we pushed her too in some of the other races. So here's Dubai right here, the tallest building in the world and so forth. So we'll go to the next one. We went from there. And sometimes we checked into hotels, not to stay overnight, but just to take a shower and clean up. But we had to wait in line like everyone else. So again, with all our luggage and having to have to wait, and again, it wasn't like we were treated like kings and queens and like on and off and in and out real quick. We had to wait in customs and everything else just like everyone else. So here we are in Lisbon. Did I get the video here? No. Oh, Dubai, okay. So that's Lisbon. And next one up. This is Cartagena now. I'm just going to skip right to it. So this one was, in my opinion, this was number 6. And it was probably, for me, the toughest one. A lot of times, it's almost like the 21, 22-mile mark of a marathon. You're almost there, but you're not there, but you've done a lot. And you're psyched you got only one to go, but can I get there? And it was about, when we arrived there, it was like 90 degrees. By the time we started running, it was probably in the 80s, something like that. We started in the old town, and then we headed outside the old city into the main city. But unfortunately, there was just a lot of commotion, and there weren't a lot of signs and a lot of people directing us. So we all thought we got lost. So we're trying to find our way. So it was really kind of discouraging because we weren't sure that we were on the right course. So we had to run a certain distance outside the old city and then come back into the old city. So here we are running outside of it. And here's Sarah Reinenstein. Sarah is a single-leg amputee and wearing a prosthetic. She did the half marathons. Richard actually had a half marathon distance for folks who want to do a half marathon in the 7 continents versus a full marathon. Here we are out into the city, running through the city community with all the buses and the cars and the congestion and the people, hoping that we would find our way back. There's Becca right there.
This was Super Bowl Sunday, which made it actually really fun. Some people actually stepped into bars to check out the score. Becca's husband was giving us the score on loops, so that was cool.
There's Nick finishing right there. And Renee finishing.
It felt like the Amazing Race show because everyone was getting lost and running from every which way.
Yeah, it's pretty weird because as we're running the final loops inside the old city, I was like, I'm not sure how many miles I've run. And they said, well, check your GPS watch. I said, I'm not wearing a GPS watch. So it was like really difficult to actually figure out. And some of us really knew we ran further than a marathon distance, like Becca and a few others. Any comments on that?
Nothing will scare you like being lost in Colombia, but you just kind of figure it out, and you know that you're going to get through it. You know that you have the home court advantage. Next up is in Miami. So when we finished Colombia was one of my favorites because it was so beautiful. And when we stepped off the plane, there were a bunch of kids cheering us on from the local track club, and that was so awesome and inspiring for us. So I did love the Colombia location. It was really beautiful, but it was just so unfortunate to get lost, but that's okay. we were up in Miami next, so one more to go at that point.
So we left Colombia, and we only had, what was it, 2.5-hour flight or something like that. It was our shortest flight of the entire week. So that was good and bad in a sense that the amount of rest we got was limited. So the more time in the year, it works against you because you're 35,000 feet trying to recover, hoping you don't blood clot, hoping you don't cramp, all of that. But at the same time, you know, the longer you are in the air, the more rest you get, because as soon as we get off the plane, we just get on a bus and went right to the venue. The great part about arriving in Miami, especially those of us who are from the U.S., our family showed up. My wife showed up, and Joe was there, and your kids, and other husbands and spouses, and it almost like we pulled up on the bus, and it was as if we came back from the war. You know, and here's all our family, and they're cheering, and they're screaming, and they're taking pictures, and they're hugging, and they're kissing, and it was like unbelievable. And I'm like, wait a minute, time out. We got another marathon to run. Let's not celebrate too soon here. Just another marathon. I mean, when you're just preparing for one, you're like really sensitive about everything, you know, everything you're eating, everything you're doing, you're resting, get off your feet. And here we are, just finished 6, and we're partying like rock stars right before the start of the Miami one. The Miami race started, I think, at 2:30 in the afternoon. So it was around 70 some odd degrees. So it was really, as you can tell, it was really warm. We had just run 6. We had 1 to go, but nobody was going to quit on this one. So here's the final one in Miami.
And believe it or not, this is where everyone ran their most of everybody ran their fastest one here. On the 7th continent, 7 marathons. This is where everybody ran their fastest.
South Beach, of all places. We're running in South Beach.
So I know we were talking about, you know, could you do it? Would you be able to do it? What's your marathon experience? I was really worried coming into this because I wasn't trained, and Richard kept saying, you know, the more you run, the more you'll train as well. Now, I don't recommend going into it not training, but this was the fastest one I ran as well, and I truly do believe that each time we ran, it did get more enduring.
This one was not my fastest, but there's Nick. But the last 10 miles of this was my fastest 10 miles of the entire 7 marathons because I knew I was done. What was interesting about the whole experience is that when you were running that day or that night, I was always running for tomorrow. I wasn't running for today, because if you ran for today and you expended everything, you'd have nothing left in the tank. So it's all about pacing. Like in a regular marathon, it's pacing over 7 of them. So if you made, there's Becca finishing with her daughter. So if you made a critical mistake anywhere along the way, you would have been toast, you know. So here's the end here coming up. So you can see his time was 3:21. That might have been his slowest one, Gary's. Not that that's shabby. Now Michael Wardian, ultramarathoner Michael Wardian, holds the record. He averaged last year 2:45 per marathon, averaged. Some of them were in the 2:30s. So it's pretty fascinating what some people can actually do. So I'm just going to ask the panel one more question, if you have any questions out there. For you, what was the toughest part of this whole experience? What would you say was the toughest part for you? Nick?
Well, everybody had a night where they probably struggled or needed an IV or, you know, just had their moment. Mine was Dubai, just had a bad night, had to walk a little bit, had a little knee problem, didn't know if I was going to be able to run the next day, but just by recovering and by getting good sleep that night and just like kind of doing a little praying, it worked out. But it seemed like everybody had their moment where they were either like sitting on the side of the path, rubbing their leg, or like I said, getting an IV or being treated for something. But that was my night. I don't know if I'm ever going back to Dubai.
For me, after Lisbon, I could barely walk on my ankles. My Achilles really flared up because I hadn't been running a ton, and it was a really solemn night. you know, if you talk about hitting a wall in a marathon, now we're on to marathon 5. So Lisbon was again at night. We started about 10 o'clock at night, and it was rainy and it was cold, and yeah, there was a lot of deep thoughts out and ankle pain. So that was kind of getting through that. That was a really tough one.
So I was just trying to inspire you folks to maybe sign up and do this. Now after hearing this stuff, I'm sure you want no part of this. Becca?
The hardest part for me is always being away from my daughter. You know, I kind of feel like I abandoned her to follow my dreams, but she was at the finish line, so it was my biggest inspiration to get there as fast as I could get there. And the highs of this race are incredibly high, and the lows are low, but it's all worth it in the end, and I would definitely do it a third time. It's been an incredibly fun journey, and the lifelong friends that you meet forever, and it makes it all worth it. But I had the time of my life. I really did it. I really enjoyed myself, but when it gets tough, just dig deep and fight through it, and you'll get through it.
For me, the hardest part was I think I need to work on my sleeping on a plane. I really struggled with that. I don't know how people do it. No matter how I would lie down, and the seats went pretty flat. So by the end, I was just so sleepy. But the running, I felt like I held up fine. I never had a pulled muscle. I was always on edge, worrying that I would fall apart. But fortunately, physically, that didn't happen. It was more just a sleep deprivation. My daughter ran the last 16 miles with me, which was a huge help. And then both my daughters pulled my luggage to the hotel, which was even better.
Okay, you want to see if does the group have any questions of any of us? Anybody? Mike's going to bring around the mic.
Hello. Congratulations, first of all. Congratulations, first of all. Once you guys were finished with all 7 marathons, what was your recovery like? Did you guys just completely crash, or did you end up, like, nutritionally? How did that work for you guys?
Well, I kind of screwed up because we had every night, you know, recovering, eating right, stretching right. But after the last one, like after you run any race, do you like go back to your house and stretch? And no, you maybe go have a drink or go eat chicken wings. So that night I didn't do anything, and I got home the next day. We were on a 6 a.m. flight home the next day, and I was at my house by noon the next day, and I was a mess. I really couldn't walk or do much for days because I didn't keep doing the same things that I had been doing. But, you know, my mistake because I was in bad shape for many days.
After that final race, I recovered with a really cold beer. It was, and a full pizza. I think when you're training for one, you can kind of do your nutrition. What benefits me is I don't ever really follow a plan, so that helped me. But we were scrounging. I felt like I was scrounging for food and hydration, so I was on a lot of IVs. It took me about a month to recover from my Achilles, so it was a tough, and I just spent the month walking and probably eating.
The first time I ran this, I tore my groin. It was marathon 6 mile 2, and I had a complete tear in my groin. And, you know, I was thinking there's no way that I can look my sponsors and daughter in the face and tell them that I was too sick and tired to finish this job. It wasn't an option. So my husband was at the finish line, and I just collapsed into his arms, and I really couldn't run for like another month. And I walked into the doctor. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days happened. Your body just gave out. So that was the first time in my life I had gone like a month without running, but I wanted to keep my Boston Marathon streak alive. I had run like 15 in a row at the time, so I'm like, I'm running the Boston Marathon. I don't care what you say. And so I did it, and I was lucky to finish that. But the second time that I did it, I had the help from TB's company, Tom Brady's company, and I finished without an injury, but I remember just being so tired, you know, just thinking like I am so fatigued and so tired. So I just eased back into it and got a lot of deep tissue massages and felt better.
So when I finished, I just wanted to sleep, but I had to get back to school. Like, they let me leave for this. So, and then I was copied on an email that said they were going to have a parade for me. So I kind of figured I had to show up. So we finished Monday night, and I was back at school Wednesday morning. And I teach phys ed, so it's kind of hard to just sit there. But I think one tricky part of the recovery for me was there was food on the plane, but at night after the race you just get what you could find. And I eat a plant-based diet, so I don't eat dairy or meat. And one night I stooped really low and I had McDonald's French fries because it was all I could find that didn't have dairy or meat. But in general, I feel like my diet helped me. The plane food was really good. And so I ran another marathon in early April because it was $35, the cheap marathon. And so I wanted to qualify for Boston because none of my 7 marathons was fast enough. So I did that. And I don't know, I felt like my recovery is pretty good. I only took about 7 days off, and then I started running again.
You know, we're all different. So no matter what any one of us say doesn't mean that that's going to work for you. You just got to figure it out for yourself. And for me, I don't think I'm not saying I didn't need to recover, but I never felt like, oh, now I have to recover. It's all about intensity as opposed to duration. And I never ran hard enough or fast enough to really do a lot of damage. It was just a matter of getting into a pace that I felt comfortable with. I knew what I wanted to do going in. I knew what I was capable of doing. Nothing like I could do, obviously, 30 years ago. But I said, if I just stick to this, I'm not going to hurt myself. And, you know, about 3 weeks before the Boston Marathon that year, last year, I went out in my own neighborhood and I ran 4 marathons and 3 half marathons in a week, right around my house, just doing laps around the neighborhood. And I just felt like, okay, I know I have the foundation to do this. Now it's a matter of, can I do it jumping on and off of an airplane and flying all over the world? So that was the difference for me, is more recovering from that stuff than recovering actually from the running itself. So I think I took 1 day off and then just got back into my normal, you know, training or whatever routine, trying to get ready for Boston in April. So again, everyone's different. Maybe I didn't try hard enough either. Maybe I didn't run fast enough to do too much damage that I needed to take time off, but I didn't. So, anyone else?
What was everybody's mindset? Were people focused on doing it fast or doing it and getting through all 7?
I think everything's relative. Fast is different for different people, right? So I really do think, maybe with the exception of Gary and Becca, because they were on a mission to win, so they couldn't just settle in and just kind of, all right, whatever I get, I get. They had to go out at a pace that they knew was going to get them to the finish line first. That's a whole different strategy than the rest of us saying, okay, how do I feel today? Let the gun fire, I'm going to go out at a certain pace, and if I don't feel really well, I'm going to back off. No pressure, because I just want to finish. Believe it or not, Richard gave us, I think, up to, was it 8 hours? 8 hours. We had up to 8 hours to finish. So with all due respect, you can almost walk the whole thing. Some people, yeah. Scott Middleman said, that's for me right there. I'm gonna walk it. But I mean, I think the majority of people, you know, ran the whole thing. There were some who ran most of it and walked some, and there were some who, again, weren't that experienced, and they walked the whole thing. But they got through it in 6 hours. I think the slowest one was maybe 7.5 hours, you know, but everyone, like I said, everyone but one got through it.
Yeah, I think for me, I had my entire school tracking my every move. So I had planned on just settling in, and I think I did the best I could do with what I have. But it was a lot of pressure knowing they were watching, and I really just didn't want to get injured.
So I'm really competitive, and when I ran the race the first time and won it, it was such a good feeling. You know, I was really proud of myself. I'm not really proud of myself, but I was really proud of myself. And I remember the first time I ran this, I trained for 1 year. I put my whole heart and soul into this, and I ran between 70 and 100 miles per week, and yoga and CrossFit, personal training, everything that I could do to cross this finish line first. And I remember thinking to myself, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable to survive it. You know, in your training, while you're running the races, while you're sleeping on planes, I was so out of my comfort zone. So I said, if you can get really comfortable with being uncomfortable, you'll make it.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing with any training. For me, it was survival, and I had thrown it out there. People know I can do a lot of marathons. They thought it would be easy, but I had doubts. So, like anything, I just listen to my body. You know, I think in the 7-mile race tomorrow or in any marathon you do, I rarely run with a watch, so it was just listening to what my body said. Because after the first marathon, I got hypothermia in, I know Dave said it was really warm, but I got freezing, and I thought I was done after that one, so I really had to take it back because more so what was hard, the runs were almost the easiest. It was getting your luggage after, getting on the plane, standing in line. All of us know airports. It was a lot of extra energy, transferring, finding food, showering, checking in and out of hotels. So that was more of the enduring part to get through, and you really had to be strategic on saving some energy.
Kind of like Renee, I had a lot. I'm not a teacher, but I had a lot of people back home who had heard that I was doing this. So, like there was a lot of pressure I felt, but I still was just, you know, train as hard as I could. Kind of like what Becca said, I put a whole year or more into it, doing everything right, and a lot of help at home from my wife, just letting me train and sleep. But then I just, you know, trust your body. You know, listen to your body. Some nights I was just kind of slugging along a little bit, and some nights I felt good, and I felt like the nights I felt good, I would pick it up as I went. Like the second half would be faster than the first half, but it's really just saving energy, saving emotional energy until that last day. You really have no idea how you're going to feel until we get to Miami.
How many pairs of sneakers did you each bring? I came in late to this. Maybe you already said that.
I brought 4 pairs, but only wore 1 pair of trail shoes in Antarctica, and I wore 1 other pair the other 6 days straight. I just had 2 extras in the bag in case we lost bags or there was a blowout or something, but brought 4, wore 2.
I brought 2. One was a full size larger, which thankfully was good because I had the Achilles flare up, and then also when you're flying, everything swells. So you imagine running swells, flying swells. So I brought 2 and ended up wearing 1 for 5 of the marathons because I couldn't fit into the other one.
I did the same thing. I brought 4 pairs, and I brought 2 that were 7.5. That's what size I am, and then I brought 2 pairs that were size 8, and I needed the 2 pairs because my feet swelled so much. I needed the second pair of the size 8s.
I brought 3, but I only wore 2. But I ran in my trail shoes 5 out of the 7 races because they had more room in them. My feet were like huge after every long flight. And I didn't get as many blisters between my toes when I wore the trail shoes. So, I mean, normally I would never wear trail shoes on any surface but dirt, but they just worked better for me.
We didn't even ask each other how many pairs of shoes we're going to bring, but I brought 4 also, all a half size larger than I normally wear. And I wore 1 pair in Antarctica, wore them again in Cape Town. Then I switched off in Perth just to get another sort of sense of a different pair of shoes on my feet. I didn't feel comfortable after the first lap. I brought the original pair with me, so I pulled over and changed into the original pair. So effectively, I wore 1 pair of shoes the whole way. One of the reasons why I thought 4 pair is I ran across the United States 40 years ago, and when I did that, I wore 8 pair of shoes, and I kept changing them during the day because I felt like every time I put on a new pair of shoes, it was like a refresher, you know, that I was accenting different muscle groups in my legs and in my foot. So putting on the different pair of shoes made all the difference in the world to be able to continue to run enormous distances back to back to back. So strategy in all of this plays a huge role. You can do all the training in the world, but if you don't have the right strategy, that in the final analysis may get you. So one more question, anybody or anyone? Okay, one more.
So what's next for each of you?
I went back to trail racing. I ran a 50K last weekend, and I'm running a 50-miler soon and then a 100-miler. It's a really different kind of thing, but I really enjoy suffering, I think.
So I'm going to finish out the 50 states, and 35 states out of 50, and then in 2020 I'm going to plan to run across the U.S.
I didn't know about that one. I would like to do an Ironman. So that's probably next for me. But truly, I'd love to just, and have another baby. So that's the next adventure.
It's going to take me about 7 years to pay myself back for the trip. So when that's done, I really don't know. I'm running tomorrow. I have no big marathon plans. Or maybe we've talked, maybe we'll do this again. When we assume that the locations will change if they keep doing this. And maybe we'll go do it again in 3 or 4 years or 5 years. Maybe we'll do it on Dave's 70th birthday. We'll all go.
Yeah.
So what's next for me? What's next for me is to be the best father to my children and the best husband to my wife that I can be. Period. How'd that work? I made you all look bad. So listen, one more round of applause for all these folks. Now, anybody else, raise your hand if you want to do it now. Just raise it anyways. Yeah, right. Look at, we haven't inspired anybody. Oh, Mike? All right, we got one. All right. Good luck to everyone running the race tomorrow. Hope you do well. Thank you for attending.